morning. I'd like to call the Carson City Board of Equalization Board to order. It's Tuesday, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day, and looks like it's about 9:03 a.m. Community Center. Item A, call to order and determination of quorum.
Chairperson Block.
Here.
Member McFadden.
Here.
Member Rassner.
Here.
Member Wilson.
Here.
Member Simmons.
Here.
A quorum's present.
Great, thank you. On to item number B, public comment. The public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Carson City Board of Equalization that's not already on the agenda. Seeing that there's no public, item C, for possible action, review and approval of minutes of the January 31st, 2017 meeting.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. On to item D, for possible action. Petition for review of taxable valuation of JVRS Enterprises, LLC at 1365 Medical Parkway, APN 007-531-05. Assessor.
Mr. Chair, if we could have everybody sworn in who's going to testify. Everybody who's going to testify, if you could raise your right hand. Do you each swear to or affirm that the testimony you will give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, great. Would you like to present?
I'm going to let him do it since 2 weeks now.
So, you want me to start?
Yeah. Just identify the property.
Good morning, board members. My name is Donald Massa. I'm with the Carson City Assessor's Office. This is appeal agenda item D, parcel number 007-531-05, 1365 Medical Parkway, Carson City, Nevada.
I'm experiencing technical difficulty here. Can
same here.
someone help me with the laptop? It's the first 10 pages come up and the rest of it is not on this laptop. And here he comes. One moment, please. Okay, do you guys want to present it, or are we going to have the... Okay, if we could have the appellant come up and present their case, that would be great. And when you get up to the mic, please state your name for the record and sign in, please. Do we have a sign-in sheet?
No, we don't, but I know their names.
Over there.
Mr. Shelter,
Richard. Hello.
You want one too?
the clerk needs one. And you-
Mr. Susser, is this something that we already have in our packet? Oh,
No, it's not, Your Honor.
Okay.
I'm sorry, sir.
Did you want to give the members an opportunity to, this is all new information, correct?
Some of it is duplicated, and some of it, there was an error in one of the attachments that was included with our packet. It didn't include the last page of the letter that was written. The rest, some of them are citations to statutes. I was prepared to walk you through them. And then Mr. Sheldrew is going to do a PowerPoint presentation that has some depictions of some of the subject property. So that's how we were going to proceed.
Okay, because you can also, if you needed to, after she walks you through it, if you needed more time to review this, since this is new evidence, you could also just take like a 10-minute break and review it before you go into deliberations.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My name's Judy Sheldrew. I'm the attorney representing JVRS Enterprises LLC on this appeal. Mr. Sheldrew is going to be presenting a PowerPoint presentation, but there are in your packet copies, slides of that PowerPoint presentation, and that will come after my presentation. What I am presenting today is really just walk you through some of the statutes that we think are appropriate, and like I said, clarify some missing information that somehow didn't get into the D part of your packet. So if you would look at the exhibit list, Exhibit 1 is a complete copy of the December 26th, 2016 letter that I wrote to Mr. Dolly with respect to some concerns about how the property had been valued. And we noted that in the packet D, for some reason, the last page of my letter did not get in. And the last page of my letter is relatively important because it really outlines the relief that my client is seeking with respect to this particular item. And what he was asking is that Mr. Dolly report the error that we are going to present to the Board of County Supervisors because the error itself ended up over-assessing this particular piece of property. And in this particular section, it's the first paragraph on page 3 of my letter, I reference NRS 361.768. Exhibit 2 is a copy of NRS 361.768. NRS 361.768 provides for a correction of an overassessment of real property because of factual error. Paragraph 1 cites that if an overassessment of real property appears on the secured tax roll of any county because of a factual error concerning its existence, use, or legal or physical restrictions on its use within 3 years after the end of the fiscal year for which the assessment was made, the county assessor shall make a report thereof to the county commissioners of the county. And what Mr. Sheldrew began by asking Mr. Dolly to do is to correct an error as to the location of a septic system that is shown on the subject property. Our contention is that the subject property is not vacant, that it does indeed have an improvement, and we're going to walk you through our logic on that particular subject. But our contention is that this is an error that needs to be corrected. As a result of the error, an overassessment has occurred on that particular parcel since Mr. Dolly has assessed it as commercial property instead of residential property, which it used to be and has historically been classified as. Exhibit 3 is a copy of the instructions that a person is given on how to petition for a review of the property taxes. And the first paragraph on the right-hand side under Steps in a County Board of Equalization Appeal cites that if you still believe a review of the County Board of Equalization is necessary after you've discussed the matter with the assessor, reviewed the assessor's information, and after any factual errors have been corrected, then you may initiate an appeal process as follows. Mr. Dolly has not corrected the factual errors that we believe have led to the overassessment in this particular case, which is what Mr. Sheldrew was requesting that he do. Instead, Mr. Dolly suggested that that Mr. Sheldrew simply bring the matter to the Board of Equalization for resolution. Mr. Sheldrew did that, and that particular appeal is in your packet. But in reviewing the appeal that Mr. Sheldrew filled out, we believe that the appeal is more appropriate under NRS 361.356, and that is shown under Exhibit 4. of your packet. Particularly if you look, I direct your attention to paragraph 3. If the board finds that an inequity exists in the assessment of the value of the land or the value of the improvements or both, the board may add to or deduct from the value of the land or the value of the improvements or both, either of the appellant's property or of the property to which it is compared to equalize the assessment. Mr. Sheldrew erroneously asked the board to look at this appeal under the full cash value is less than the computed taxable value of the property. I'm sure after you read the material that was in your packet, the backup material that was included, you saw that his issue is really not one of the full cash value versus the taxable value, but really one of inequity based on the error that caused the overassessment of the subject parcel. As a result, under Exhibit 5, Mr. Sheldrew, and I have the original, which I will give to Mr. Dolly. Mr. Sheldrew wants to file an amended petition for review of taxable valuation to correct the error on the citation and to correct a few other things as well. You will see on page 1, he has indicated that this really does involve, in our opinion, two parcels, parcel 007-53105, which is the subject of the material you have in your packet, and then also 007-53106, which is the adjoining parcel, the parcel that has other residential improvements on it, and which the septic system on 05, which it supports. So we believe the best that we can understand the form that we needed to fill out, that this probably does impact two parcels, and we've included both of those parcels under on the third page of Exhibit 5. So this is the appeal that we're asking you to consider today. Again, the backup material that we provided really goes to the issue of the type of assessment that Mr. Dolly has put on the parcel, the parcel in question, and not so much the taxable value versus full cash value. Exhibit 6 includes, and some of these were referenced in Mr. Dolly's presentation, includes the Nevada Administrative Code sections that define improved land. Improved land is a land that has any improvements sufficient to allow the identification of or establish the current actual use. Improvement is defined under NAC 3611133, again, as meaning any building, fixture, or other structure erected upon or affixed to the land. And NAC 361.1141 defines the land, which means to mean the surface of the earth together with airspace above the surface and everything under that surface to the apex at the center of the earth, which would certainly then include a septic system. In their discussions, Mr. Dolly indicated because the septic system was underground, he first indicated that then it wasn't an improvement. We believe that the Nevada Administrative Code is very clear that it can be under the earth, and that the improvement, it is a structure erected upon or affixed to the land. And that it has indeed been defined as an improvement sufficient to allow the identification of or establish the current actual use, which is a residential improvement as a septic system to support the residents on the adjoining parcel. Exhibit 7, and then the next page of Exhibit 6 is NRS 361.035, and that is referenced in NAC 3611133 to identify what the statutes allow as improvements. They certainly include all houses, buildings, but they also include fences, ditches, structures, erections, railroads, toll roads, and bridges, or other improvements built or erected upon the land, and that is in NRS 361.0351A. So the list of what constitutes improvements under the statutes and the code is fairly extensive, but that particular statute is referenced in the code and identifies specific things, including fences and ditches. And Exhibit 7 comes from the assessor's own records, and it's a list of improvements that are on parcel 007-53106. Parcel 007-53106 is the adjoining parcel to the parcel that's in dispute right now, and it has, as you can see, a number of identified improvements, including two septic systems, one installed in 1963 and one installed in 1972. These have been valued over the years by the assessor's office for purposes of assessment. Clearly, as they are constituted or believed to be on parcel 007-53106, they count as improvements. We do not understand why, if they're an improvement on one parcel, if they're found to be located on a second parcel, the adjoining parcel, in fact, why they would be not considered to be improvements by Mr. Dolly. The next exhibit is NRS 361.227. And this one you're probably all very familiar with. This is the statute that outlines how taxable value is to be determined, and it requires that that person appraise the full cash value of vacant land or improved land consistently with the use to which the improvements are being put. That means based on actual use on improved parcels. Our argument today, and Mr. Sheldrew can show you a good deal more information in his presentation, is that parcel 007-53105 is indeed improved land, and it is being used to support the adjoining parcel because it has the septic system that services a single-family residence on the adjoining parcel, which is the parcel 007-53106. I also want to point your attention out to paragraph 2 of NRS 361.227, which requires that a unit of appraisal must be a single parcel unless the location of the improvements causes two or more parcels to function as a single parcel. It is our contention that the location of the septic system on the lower parcel 05, is such that it causes the two parcels to function as a single family residential classification, because obviously a house cannot function without the septic system or sewer disposal system, and the sewer disposal system is unnecessary if you don't have a house in the adjoining parcel. And in this particular case, again, Mr. Sheldrew will show you where these two things are located, but it is our contention that these two parcels should be appraised as a single parcel simply because the location of the septic system is such that it causes the two parcels to function as a single unit. Exhibit 360, I'm sorry, exhibit number 9 is NRS 360.291. And this includes the taxpayer's Bill of Rights. And the reason we have included it here is that because there is some contention about whether or not between Mr. Dolly's office and ourselves as to whether or not the septic system does constitute improved land. The taxpayer's Bill of Rights in subsection 0, or I'm sorry, O, is to have the statutes imposing taxes and any regulations adopted pursuant thereto construed in favor of the taxpayer if those statutes and regulations are of doubtful validity or effect, unless there is some specific statutory provision that is applicable. So if there is a doubt as to what improved land is, we believe that the statutes, the taxpayer's Bill of Rights requires that it be construed in the favor of the taxpayer. And my final exhibit is NAC 361.122, which is, talks about evaluation of improved land. And if you'll note, there, this particular code section contemplates contemplates and directs as to how land is to be valued if it's being used consistent with the zoning, or if it's not consistent with the zoning. And Mr. Dolly's presentation makes much of the zoning, what the parcel is zoned as, but it clearly the code clearly allows that land can be valued if it's not being used consistent with the zoning of the land. Mr. Sheldrew is not using his land as commercial property. He is using it as a residential facility, residential property. Both parcels are being used toward that end, and these are the specifics as to how it is to be valued if it's not being used consistent with the current zoning. So I don't know if you have any questions. I don't know whether you take questions now or you take questions later. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I think what we'll do is have him finish the presentation with the PowerPoint, and then we'll hear from the assessor's office, and then we'll come back. You can give a rebuttal, and so can they, and we'll be asking questions.
Okay, very well. Thank you.
Come on up, sir.
Thank you. For the record, Richard Sheldrew, I'm manager of JVR Enterprises. Is there a wireless mic, or I guess I can hit the PowerPoint presentation here to point out some things. Dave, if you could just go ahead and flip through the first page. As Judy has mentioned, here's the issue identified. That is my complaint. A factual error exists in the Carson City Assessor records that result in the land being assessed as vacant when it's not. Factual error is that under the listing of residential improvements in the Carson City parcel record details, the assessor's records list 2 septic systems under APN 53106 and no septic systems on parcel record 53105. The assessor's records should be corrected to reflect 1 septic system on each parcel record detail. The resolution to this whole thing, it's a simple error, and I really don't understand why I've gone through 10 months of this so far. It's an error. That's all it was. Correct it. The correction will address this issue. Next slide. This is the identification of the factual error on the parcel records. Parcel 06 on the left will show under residential improvements 2 septic systems, identified as improvements. Factually incorrect, the record on the right, 05, shows 0. The correction should be 1 under each of these partial record details right there. Next slide. Identification of issues claimed by the assessor in not correcting this factual error. Well, first, he denies that the septic system is not a significant improvement. Second, in my first letter, the assessor denied that 2 systems existed on the property and now denies that the second system, once we showed it to him, does not exist on parcel 05. The third issue is the assessor denies that the location of the residential septic system on 05 causes APN 05 and 06 to function as a single parcel. Civil engineering, a septic system and a house have to go together on that site, and I'll go further into this. Next slide. Okay, this addressed the first issue. The assessor states that the septic system is not a significant improvement. The assessor's conclusion is in conflict with the definition of improvements in statutes and NAC previously outlined by Judy, or my attorney here. And certainly in his packet of information to you, he has put a statement in there. I believe it is his packet, page 22. It states the assessor's office has contacted the State Department of Taxation and surrounding county assessors, whom all agree. If there is a septic system on the vacant parcel 05, it does not meet the requirements of state statute. In my viewpoint, this is a legal interpretation that someone has made. And obviously, it looks like the State Department of Taxation made this interpretation. I must tell you yesterday that I called the State Department of Taxation. Started at approximately 10:30. I finally was able to talk up the chain of command. Was referred to, I guess, a Chuck who did talk to Dave and said, based on the information provided to him by the Carson City assessor, it appears what he was doing was okay. My contention is, well, wait a minute, you've just done an interpretation of law here. I want to see the analysis that justifies this as insignificant. Maybe I was wrong. After 4 hours, I could not get anything in writing. I found out it was all done verbally, and there was no legal opinion. In 10 minutes of conversation with Heather, she said this was not a legal opinion. This comment certainly implies that this is a legal opinion, in my viewpoint. So with that said, whatever information has been provided to you is not a legal opinion, hence the reason we brought an attorney to address these issues for you that you may ask questions of. Okay. As mentioned, his own records list this as an improvement. His own records do, even though he says he doesn't have records to prove it. He has provided no legal support for his conclusion. Certainly, if there's disagreement, like this statement on page 22, I, as a taxpayer, should get something in writing saying why it contradicts state statutes. I really should. D is mentioned, Taxpayer Bill of Rights states. And Chuck at the Department of Taxation said, yeah, it was kind of confusing on this issue. It just wasn't clear. To me, it's very clear. However, if it's not clear, it still comes to the taxpayer in favor of. Next slide, please. Okay, I found this online. This is a publication by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. It has a publication report on the environmental effects of septic tank systems. States the following. Instead of reading it, I'll let you guys have maybe 15 seconds to look at it. Okay, in other words, a septic system is not an insignificant improvement. As mentioned there, its impact to a community's health system, the water system environment can be more critical than an empty building this size that's been placed on land that would definitely be considered an improvement. It's not insignificant. In fact, if anything, it's critical to a home that uses a septic that it be managed and maintained correctly. Next slide. Okay, now we go into the second contention. It was initially denied that 2 septic systems were existing out there. In fact, when I was contacted, I guess they were under the understanding that both houses fed 1 septic tank on the upper house, which I'll show you a graphic of this in a minute. So we noticed in NRS that the assessor is required to have a complete set of maps that accurately illustrate land parcels. I keep getting told we have no records. And I keep getting told they're not accurate, okay? So with that, next step. Can everyone hear me if I talk right here for a minute?
If you need it for the records. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so I'll put it on the mic. This map was provided to you in your packet. I took his records. Right there, you can see a little white dot. That is one of the septic tank lids. Evidently, God was smiling on me when this aerial was taken. We had the septic system probably fully maintained, pumped out, and cleaned in about 2012, if I recall. That's why these tanks were exposed back then. It's hard to see in this report. Next slide, Dave. Here's the same map to show it clearer for you. You can definitely see the septic system tank right there. And please note that little shadow dot right next to it, because I'm going to come back in a photograph in a minute and show it to you. Next slide, please. This is an outline superimposed of the septic system and how it's attached to the house and where it sits on the parcel. In the records, the assessor comments that if indeed this parcel is on, if indeed the septic is on this parcel, I'm in violation of some code because it can't be 10 feet within a border. That's incorrect. If you further read the next line in what he provided to you, it said the authorities can approve it. Now, this house and this septic were constructed in 1963. The reason that septic had to be placed there is because of that yellow line that goes to the pump house. State law requires a septic system to be located 150 feet away from a wellhead. He did not provide that information to you. The distance approximately to the entrance of those tanks is 155 feet measured. That was the reason the city approved it back in '63. It's the reason the systems were constructed on that parcel, and it's the reason they've got to be there, because of the health issue to the wellhead. Second, he states in his letter, we can find no proof of where the leach field's at or where they exist, even though I've showed him on this map. He even said we can't find the septic, even though his own records show it here. Next slide, please, Dave. I found this 1990s picture on the assessor's records. Now, I'm not so much worried about scale here, because what I want to show is when he said he could not find the leach fields. See this area where the sagebrush is not growing out back here? This is where the tractors, excavation by Jim Bird Construction, who put this septic system in, dug the leach fields and installed them. The later maps show the sagebrush growing back over, but this shows the soil still disturbed and where it hadn't grown back over from the installation of this septic system. Next slide. That little dot I showed you in the picture, that's a physical picture of it that he says doesn't exist. Right there. That's the clean out. The tank lids you saw in that picture are just right in front of it. You guys are certainly welcome to come out there and look at it. You really are. I tried getting him out there. I spent money, tracked money to uncover this, to prove him that yes, it existed, and yes, it existed right here on the physical property. It's shown on his own records. Next slide. He will then claim that the maps used to show the septic tanks are not accurate. I do reference the fact that he's supposed to have accurate maps, and yet I've not been provided any. Well, let's take a look at the GIS system that Carson City uses. I was IT manager for Department of Transportation for some 25 years. We had some 4 different software systems that provided GIS for the department. Esri, and I've called Esri, and I've also talked to surveyors at R.O. Anderson. They reference this right here. These are the measuring accuracies of the program of this software as stated. If the data is corrected, which I was advised that the Carson City Assessor's data is corrected, the errors are within 1/3 of a meter or 1/2 meter. If the error is, or excuse me, if the GIS data is based on uncorrected data, it could be up to 2 meters, about this much, okay? I will give him the full benefit of the error. Move that boundary that he shows on a utility map used by Sierra Pacific Power, property people, surveyors in Carson. It still is on the west side of the septic, thereby putting the entire septic system onto parcel 05. Another issue here. Could we go back to the first slide, 3, back to the one that you submitted? That one right there. When the hospital was built in 2003-2005, Palmer Engineering did a complete survey of the lands out on the west end of Carson. All of these properties were originally divided off the federal ranch back in the 40s. These particular parcels that I own, as well as this one, used to come to a point which our family owned. My grandfather was city engineer here back in 1949. He did the original survey out on these parcels here. However, what should be noted here is that all the metadata used to put into the GIS systems, as well as survey data, confirms the property points throughout the entire area of the hospital campus out there. I must tell you that if any errors had occurred, they would have been noted back then. Second issue, in order for that septic system, which goes some 60 feet out onto that parcel, for an error of that magnitude to occur on his maps, would put, and there is a scale, and there's 1 inch to 60 feet, I believe, you would have to go through every detail listing on the entire area out there and resurvey it. So I will submit that to you. Dave, can you go back down to the other slides there? Okay. Summary of issue 2. In his first letter to me, after I showed him this was a simple error and to please fix it, he writes back that there weren't 2 septic systems out on this parcel. I received a call from Mr. Dustin Booth of Carson City to confirm it. Took him out there, we confirmed there's 2 tanks. I dug it up. And I don't wish to get Dustin in trouble, but I noticed in one of the letters, I guess because that the assessor's office was not included somehow, the report of the city department head back to this board is not accurate. The assessor then stated in the response letter to my attorney that the second system is not on APN 05. He provides no records or proof of this statement. If you read his letter, he now admits, I'll read his letter, it appears that the septic tank is close to or at the western property line and that a portion of the leach fields may be on 05. We are unable to verify this because there are no public records for when the system was installed. Okay? Excuse me 1 minute here. He then states, because the septic tank is located on the same parcel as the residences, we believe the parcel information correct. My gosh, I've just shown you pictures of where it's at on his own records. I've shown you improvement records where he lists it as improvements. We all know a house cannot function without a septic tank. Number 4, the map provided by the assessor to you clearly shows the septic system on parcel 05. Therefore, the second residential septic system that includes septic tanks and associated leach fields are on APN 05, as shown on the assessor's own records and listed on his reports, and it contradicts the information in these letters that were provided to me. Next slide, Dave. The assessor then denies that the location of the residential improvement on APN 05 functions to support the residents on 06. Judy, my attorney has already mentioned the fact that the unit appraisal can affect based on if the improvement can be shown to support the other improvement on the other parcel. A septic system located on 05 provides for the waste disposal for a resident on 06. That is the present condition of this property when assessed and is still the present condition of this property. The house cannot function without the current septic system. Therefore, in the time frame of this assessment, they are functioning together. The assessor does not address this information to you in his packet. What he states is that it would be illogical because if I ever sold this bottom parcel, then obviously the 2 improvements couldn't function together, and therefore it's illogical to use the argument. I disagree. They're being used that way right now. Second, if indeed I sell that parcel, then guess what? I, as a property owner, am faced with a decision. Provided I don't break any state laws, any local codes, I have the option to abandon the house, get an easement from the new property owners to use that septic on that parcel, or at that time connect to the city if indeed that's where the property goes. But that's my decision. But right now it's functioning as a septic. Next slide. Summary. There has been no law showing me that a septic is insignificant. Indeed, I think I've shown you, based on EPA and other issues, that a septic is extremely critical. I think I've also shown you he lists it as improvements on his own records. He has assigned values to it, he has depreciated it, and he's been assessing it for 60 years. Simply, there's an error. It shouldn't be 2 on 1 parcel. Number 2, the location of this septic system is clearly on the assessor's records. Aside from no other showing, I guess I don't know what to do. I'm using all his information to show him this stuff. Third, he doesn't directly address the fact that the parcels can't function independently on this whole issue. Next slide, please. Conclusion. There is a residential improvement on 05 that is physically attached to the residential improvement on 06. The residential improvement on 06 cannot function in its current use as a single-family residence without using the residential improvement on APN 05. The usage of parcels remains residential family has been since the case when it was first constructed back in 1950s by my family. The assessor's parcel detail records are factually incorrect as it reflects and should be corrected. Next slide, please. The assessment of this land should be corrected to show it as improved land consistent with its use as single-family residence and valued as a single parcel. And I would still request to this board somehow to get the interpretation of law where he says it does not construe to the statutes. That he states he's done. Thank you for your time in this matter, and if there's any questions, I will gladly take it.
Mr. Sheldrew, did you provide paper copies to the clerk on this?
Right there.
No, on the whole PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, great. Why don't we hear the assessor's side of the coin, and then we'll go back for questions.
Thank you. Donald Massow, Carson City Assessor's Office. I'm sorry, this is appeal for 007351. I'm sorry. I should memorize this by now. I've been working at 53105. Thank you. Before I start, there's a typo in our packet. It's on page 24. It's a value typo. It's the third paragraph. It's the fifth line. And it should read, it reads $21,117,016, and it should read $2,117,016. So that being said, so there's three facets to this appeal. And one is the actual exact location of the septic system, which is unknown. And whether by maps that show, the maps, if you reference the two maps that the appellant showed, they show dramatically different from page 48 on our appeal packet to page 50. The two maps that were supplied, one with the sewer and water lines, and then the one with standard pictometry overhead views for the parcel locations, they're dramatically different. And we don't rely on these for improvement locations. So without an actual land survey, a professional land survey, it cannot be determined the exact location of the septic system. Second facet is if a part of the septic system is on the subject parcel, and is that sufficient to allow the identification of or establish the current actual use as per NAC 361.113. And the third facet is what is the current actual use and current intended use of the subject parcel. So, excuse me, a brief history of the subject before we go into that. In 1962, we have a map showing the parcel was divided at that time, prior to the second residence being built. The subject was parcel number, and I believe it's on, I'll give you the map. It's your Exhibit H, map, page 51. And so this is an actual recorded document, but it indicates that the subject was 008-055-02, and the adjacent parcel, which they're referring to, is 008-055-01, which the assessor has all the improvements on. So 1963, again, the second residence was built on the southeast edge of the adjacent parcel and may be encroaching on the subject parcel, which has not been yet determined. So, and a little more of the history is the appellant submitted a zoning map amendment, and that is page 27 in your packet. The zoning map amendment 11-015 on February 17th, 2011. And this zoning map amendment was a request to change the subject parcel from single-family 1 acre to retail commercial. So that's being the history of the parcel. Annually, we do land valuations, no matter what, vacant land valuations. We're required to, and we reassess what the land values are. So during that land valuation in 2016, 2017, we noticed the land zoning and land use code were different and did not match. The land zoning was single-family residence 120, And the land use code was single-family residence 120, and the zoning was for retail commercial. So when we look at these properties, we have to determine market value based on highest and best use. So highest and best use is on your page 31 of your packet. And we follow the guide titled Property Assessment Valuation from the International Association of Assessing Officers. This is widely held assessment procedures. And this guide, highest and best use, defines highest and best use may be defined as that use which will generate the highest net return to the property over a period of time. So once we define highest and best use, we reassess, we verified that the property was vacant by our records, and we look at it, and it doesn't appear there's any apparent improvements on the property. So we changed the land use code per the zoning that's on the property, and we reassessed the property as vacant, and we reassessed it as a vacant parcel as commercial. Now, the definition for vacant parcel is, we use NAC 361.133.113, apologize. And that can be found on your page 22 of your packet. And what's important in the definition of improved land is NAC 361.113 clearly defines that land on which there are any improvements sufficient to allow the identification or establish the current actual use. Now, if it's sufficient to establish the current actual use, and we see everything on there, and we can tell that this parcel is this vacant commercial parcel is being used as a residence, then we would assess it that way. But per NAC 361.113 clearly states that it is not sufficient to identify the actual use. So, of course, we got a phone call and a couple of visits from Mr. Sheldrew, and we tried to, in an effort to address the appellant's concern, we asked Dustin Booth with the Department of Health and Human Services for a site visit and to confirm with us that we could both go out there at the same time. Unfortunately, we missed the appointment. It was kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing that we didn't know about. Dustin Booth ran out there with Mr. Sheldrew and took a quick look at it. And it was determined that there is a second septic out there, but unfortunately, the exact location cannot be determined. We can't just assume that something's there without records to show it or a professional land survey to define where the lines are. Pardon me one moment. So in response to the appellant's concerns and exhibits, they stated that there were factual errors, and based on NAC 361.113, that the land has to be, that the improvement has to be sufficient to allow the identification or establish the current actual use. We did not find that. What we did is we didn't find there were any factual errors. We did have the two septics on the adjacent parcel, not the subject. The adjacent is 753106. And so thus we're going to assess it as vacant and commercial. Yeah, I think. So the final, I guess I'm going to summarize real quick. There's three things that kind of matter as well as intended use and current actual use. So obviously, the appellant had changed the zoning from single-family 1 acre to residential commercial. Subsequently, the property was listed on MLS as a commercial property for commercial uses, possible lease, and they could be done separately. Nowhere is there any mention of residential use. Nowhere to the assessor's office is it apparent that it is for residential use. And based on highest and best use, for that to be residential, it would not generate the highest net returns to the property. And the third final is, the appellant willfully changed the zoning to retail commercial, listed the property for almost 2.5 years, and continues to list the property as retail commercial. So again, NAC 361113 clearly defines improved land, and we didn't find that any of those things match the vacant subject property.
Thank you. If I might just throw out a couple other items real quick, and I apologize for my voice. Just a couple things that I kind of really want to emphasize is the fact that Mr. and Mrs. Sheldrew in 2011 requested the zoning change to commercial. Prior to that, it was residential. So both parcels were being taxed as residential because the parcel with the houses on it is being used as residential, and the vacant parcel was zoned residential, so we were using it. They were not being taxed as commercial property. They did not start getting taxed as commercial property until 2016, 2017, which is when we caught the fact that the land use code and the zoning were changed. And so we now have a process in place with the planning department to notify us of any time a land use zoning changes, so we can change it right then and there. But this property did not get taxed as commercial for 5 years. So the question that I have is the fact, and I've talked to Mr. Sheldrew. I don't have an issue which way you go, I don't care. But I want you guys to make this determination, and I've told him that from day one. So you have a septic on this property. The entire septic's not on this property. If you have a house, hypothetically, that has a garage or a detached garage, and you've got a detached garage that's encroaching on another property, we're not going to split that detached garage and tax it on this property, and only a portion of it on this property because it's encroaching on a portion on this property. So if you have a septic, hypothetically, you've got in this instance, if you've got the tank that's splitting the property that's on both properties, and a septic or the leach field on another property, we're not gonna split that septic. We have to decide which property is benefiting from that or from the use of that septic. That's why we taxed it on the parcel with the houses on it. That we're not going to split that cost. We can't do that. Again, this property is being actively marketed, has been, as a commercial property. Mr. and Mrs. Sheldrew knew that. That's why they went and got the zoning change to begin with. Because everything else around there, there's no other residential property. That's all commercial. That's all medical. I mean, that's why they went and got a change. And so, I'm sorry. And it is, that's the highest and best use. So that's why we valued it as we valued it. Thank you. Sorry.
No problem. Do we have any questions for the assessor's office right now, and then we'll go back to the appellant, or should we go the opposite way?
I think you should give the appellant an opportunity to rebut.
Okay.
And then ask questions of
Okay.
everyone.
Come on up.
Mr. Dolly's correct. I did rezone the property. That's totally relevant in this case. That property's been in the family since day one, about 1949, actually. And when the property was owned, we were told by your city planning commission, Lee Plemmel, it's going to happen. You're not going to avoid it regardless, and you're going to be able to live out there as a resident. But because of all of this hospital campus that's installed, and I won't lie to you, if the property does sell, yes, it's going to benefit us. But that's not the current use of the property, which is what the law is to assess it on, okay? We're going by law. My meetings with Dave has kept hearing some 10 times, I've got to follow the statutes. I have to follow the law. I'm not a hospital corporation. I'm a private citizen. This tax is 1/10 of my annual income right now. Okay, why do you think I'm struggling and arguing this point? A, because I can prove it, it's an improvement. B, I can show it, it's on that parcel. I did go by R.O. Anderson Land Surveyors the other day to talk to them on this and the probability of a 60-foot error occurring. And truthfully, if the leach fields are on it, it's part of the system. If the septic is on it, it's part of the system. The house cannot function without it. It definitely qualifies under that law that the two have to be appraised as a single parcel, not separated as they're saying, a single parcel. The law says that. If you can show they can't operate independently. The Taxpayer Bill of Rights says to use common sense in what's going on here. A house cannot function without the septic. That is simply a given, okay? So I must tell you, I'm frustrated. I am. I've gone 9 months on this. I think I've clearly proven, to the extent possible, of records in his database that yes, there's 2 septics, yes, it's on that parcel, that a 60-foot error simply could not occur in his maps. And therefore, it exists, it's there. They keep going back to the fact, and this is the issue right here, they assessed it based on best and highest usage based on it being vacant. I think I've proven it's not vacant. It's got an improvement by state law on it. I realize it works to my advantage, but it's still the law.
So let me ask you a question based on what you just said. So, because obviously we've been in this for, what, 5 days? It's very confusing to all of us. If you sold the parcel with 2 septic tanks on it to a commercial business, they're not going to want to buy a septic tank.
No, by law, what I'm going to have to do is take that out.
Okay, take out the septic tanks.
Yes, I, as the property owner, this falls on me to go fix this issue.
Okay.
And could I, okay,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. You said if the 2 septics were on the 1 parcel, the adjoining question that would be is, okay, if I sell the bottom parcel and the septic's on it and I have to take the septic away from the house, that too is a decision, as I mentioned earlier, I, the property owner, have to make that. Abandon the house, get an easement, connect to city sewer, one of those 3 options. But that's certainly my decision as a property owner to make.
Okay, so what you're asking for is calling it an improvement on the subject parcel. It would increase the taxable value of it, would not, as an improvement? It would lower it.
If you were to change the use of this property from commercial to residential, the land value would decrease.
But right now it's zoned commercial, and it would have to go in front of the planning commission to...
They're not asking to have it rezoned. They want to keep it commercial. What they're
Okay.
saying is that the use is residential, not commercial.
Okay,
Therefore,
even
we
though-
should be taxing it as residential.
Okay, I
not
got you.
commercial.
So let me ask you this, sir. Are the 2 houses on there being rented out, or are they...
I have family members that are living in them.
So
Yeah.
virtually owner occupied?
Yes. Oh, also in rebuttal to, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead and finish.
Go ahead. Finish your thought.
He mentioned a map that showed the parcel boundary different than the utility map, which is supposed to be accurate, that was given to you. If you guys look at that map, and if you look at the upper boundary, that whole parcel boundary has been shrunk up. That's the reason that upper boundary goes through the middle of my little house instead of on the property line. It cuts right through the house. That's obviously a common sense error to correct right there. I believe.
So I have a question. So looking at the improvement list, which you provided to us, which thank you for that, the well, house, and septic system were all installed in 1963. So is there a reason why on your 2-acre property, the well would have to be located in a position where the septic, in order to be 150 feet away, would have to be on another property? I mean, it doesn't seem like there's some significant, I mean, they were installed at the same time, so it seems like, to me...
May I address that?
Yeah, go for
it. Okay, that's incorrect. There's 2 houses on the property. The first house, I think they show in the 1940s it was built. I'm pretty sure my father built it in approximately 1953. That's when the well was put in.
It's on the assessor's record at 1963. Is there a reason why
Right.
that would be incorrect?
I think you're talking, excuse me, I think he's referring to the first house that was built in the 40s.
Right, but she's referring to the well.
All three, 1963 is what I'm referring to.
Right. But see, the well was put in back before 1963 to serve the upper house.
So was there a house there at one point? I'm looking through the assessor's list of improvements, which again was provided to us by you guys, and it's all showing the single-family residence 1963. So I mean,
There's several errors on this. Obviously, you know, let's face it, I've been paying property taxes on these improvements for years. I've never questioned them until now. And now I question them because I go from $870 to $9,000. I definitely question it, okay? However, when you look at that, there are many other errors that I could correct for the assessor when you go back that far. And I'm certainly willing to if he wants. This one's germane to me right now because of the economic impact on me.
okay.
And I will say that, yes, it was zoned because the city told me it was going to happen, but the land use right now is still residential family out there.
Okay, and then I have sort of a question. This might be more for the assessor's office, but it's in reference to that NAC 444 that requires a septic system be on the same lot as the building or structure that the system serves, which of course you would have had to get an exception for, and your argument is that
We did.
because of the well. But I don't see that there's a record of that, because I feel like if there was a record of that exception, there would have been a record of that septic system being on that lot.
The entire construction of the house and the septic system were approved by your city. Now, I can't explain why you don't have the records. Well, I can. Let's face it, it was 1963. A lot of places don't have records that go that far back.
So it was constructed in 1963.
Oh, yes, that's when that house, the bottom house was. The upper house was constructed in the 50s. Okay, the well was constructed earlier for the upper house. Then the lower house was built, and the well served both houses. However, the septic system then is required to be 150 feet away by code, by law. That's why it had to be placed. Also, what we didn't go into is, well, why couldn't it have been placed elsewhere? If you look at the terrain, that's a split-level house. There's some 14, 15 feet of grade difference coming out the bottom of the house, and we can't pump sewer uphill. It's got to have a grade to go downhill into the leach fields and stuff. That's a secondary reason also why it was placed down there. And also in his report to you, he said it's got to be replaced, and as you saw, it can be approved to be put in there. Obviously, it was put there, it was inspected, and the city said, we signed off on the inspection sheet. I mean, certainly, if they say it's okay, I'm following the city codes as they have said, because they've inspected it, and they approved it.
I guess unfortunately, we can't resurrect some of the people that were out there, and Dave wasn't the assessor then, so we can move forward from here. Just one follow-up question on it's being rented out to family members. Is there a rent that's collected, or?
I shouldn't say rent. I'm letting my nieces and my son have lived out there. Okay, no, we're not charging them. We're helping them get ahead in life right now and save money to actually get a house. And
Okay.
it's tough on kids that are in their 20s.
I understand. I think we have two people up here that understand. Any more questions?
Well, and the way I understand it, in 2011, you had the property rezoned to retail commercial.
Yes, sir.
You were taxed for 5 years as single-family 1 acre,
Well, that's
which
because
is a total, complete different tax basis, commercial versus residential. I'm not worried about the septic tank or where the location is. What my concern is you've got 5 years of free ride of being commercial property and taxed as residential property.
if I may address that, and I'll let Mr. Shelder address that. The statutes do not talk about the fact that it's being, they talk about what the land's being used for, not the zoning of it. In other words, if that land was residential and if that parcel was vacant, he has the right to go assess it on its highest and best use. So if it was residential, he can go say vacant land, highest and best use. And then he could say commercial, and he would have me. Can't argue. However, conversely, it works the other way too. It can be zoned commercial, but the usage is still residential. That's what the laws are talking about here. And that is obviously the usage of this land right now. So that needs to be distinguished there.
I understand that, but you had the property listed for sale as commercial property, 2 parcels,
That's correct.
for $3.3 million.
Okay, that's correct. That's hadn't sold, has it?
No, it hasn't sold.
Okay.
But that's my point. You're wanting residential rates, but you're wanting to sell it for commercial rates. And you have gone through the Board of Supervisors and had it rezoned. So you're actually in default for 5 years of having it appraised at residential, and it should have been paid as commercial.
I'm going to disagree with that statement, and here's why. The laws talk about the usage. The current usage is not commercial on that property. The current usage is single-family residential, as has been for 50 years. If the property sells, I have no doubt it will then be used for commercial use. I will definitely state that. However, currently it's single-family residential use. Now, it hasn't sold. Yes, I've zoned it. Obviously will benefit me if it does sell. I never asked for the hospital to be built up around there and take away my zoning or the usage of that property. Not that it's not going to benefit me, I'm not going to lie to you there. But by law, the current usage is residential, single-family, 1 acre, not commercial. That's,
Then you're going to have to go back before the Planning Commission and have it changed.
no, sir, I don't. That's misinformation. I'll let my attorney address that because the laws are pretty clear on that.
I have a question for you, actually, before you go, if you don't mind. If you were to sell the vacant parcel, so then, I mean.
Or the assumed vacant parcel.
Yes, for the sake of semantics. Then what would be the plan with the septic system? I mean, at that point, it would just be an encouragement, you would pay the taxes on it with, I mean, that's kind
Well,
of.
if the parcel sells, whoever would buy the land would put a structure up there. You would no doubt be assessing them based on their usage. I might go talk to them about getting an easement so I can just keep the septic on it and continue using it. Two issues, and I'll come back. Something just hit my head. But nonetheless, that would still be a decision we would have to make on that upper parcel now with that respect to the house. Going back to his question, if I could, really quick. The logic of what you just said here about the land being commercial, ask Mr. Dolly why the upper parcel is not zoned this way right now. Ask him why he didn't zone it the way he did the bottom acre.
I do zoning.
Or excuse me.
Well, we know the planning commission is
assessed
the
it.
one that did the zoning.
I
for the Board of
apologize.
Supervisors.
The upper parcel is zoned commercial right now. It's approved as residential, single family.
The use, the actual use. We have to actually value the property based on the use. It has 2 houses on it. It's being used as residential. We're valuing it as residential.
So let me, and maybe your legal counsel can help me separate this, but you have the subject parcel for sale, and say one of the doctors wants to put a single-family residence on, they'd have to go back and get a zoning change. Because it is currently zoned commercial, it might not be used as anything other than an improvement of part of a leach field, part of a septic tank, part of a system that's connected to the other parcel. So if somebody wants to use it as a single family, it has to be rezoned back from commercial, correct?
Yes, if someone did buy that parcel from me, they wanted to put a house on it versus a medical complex, they probably would have to rezone that. I'll let.
Yeah, I know they'd have to rezone it. But.
Yeah, but, as he just said, the upper parcel is zoned residential, the upper parcel is zoned commercial, but assessed residentially because the improvements on it as is right now. The same thing should be occurring in that bottom acre because it's got an improvement on it. let alone the law that the two are attached because they have to function together.
So I agree that the septic is a improvement. However, historically, you don't split those, correct? So I think we have to take that into account.
Then you need to look at the law that says when it's on the other parcel and it functions to support the house and the two cannot operate independently, but they must function as one, the parcels have to be assessed as one parcel.
I just want to clarify, just because when the time comes for us to make a motion, I just kind of want to have this on record, that the fact that your intention would be to have an easement for the septic system so that the parcel in question could function as its own commercial parcel is very revealing to me. The fact that that's even a possibility means that that's not really applicable in this situation. I mean, the fact that it could function as a separate parcel, you're willing to sell it so that it could function as a separate parcel with a completely different use is very revealing. So I just wanted to kind of go on record with that.
Right, but what's that saying? Yes, that's a very correct statement you made. That I would be willing to, if I sold that bottom acre, I'd be willing to abandon the septic in the house, certainly. But right now, I'm not. Right now, the house uses the septic. We have to look at present usage of the land. We can't project down the future.
The septic is not prohibiting, it's not making it so that those two are forced to function as one parcel.
It is right now, yes. That's what I'm telling you guys, and I can prove that. How else, if I disconnected that septic, if I went out there and took a backhoe and cut that line, who in here can tell me that house could function by health code right now? Can anyone? No,
Well,
you can't. You
The
can't.
question is not about whether the house can function without the septic. The question is whether the two parcels can be separated and we'll consider the septic as an easement.
But that's future. That's not the present condition of the property when it was assessed for this purpose. When he assessed it, the house used the septic. The two have to work together. Therefore, that has to be under consideration. You can't say 10 years from now it may not be the case. You have to look at the current usage and how it's being used and what's actually present condition, taxpayers' bill of rights, common sense. Common sense is I'm using that septic right now, and I can prove it.
I have a question for you, and excuse my, I'm just not grasping the improvement portion based on what the packet you guys gave me. In NAC 361.1133, improvement defined, building fixture, structure erected upon or affixed on the land, including out limitations with those in paragraphs A and B. So, and it says in here, all houses, buildings, fences, ditches, structures, erections, railroad, toll roads, and bridges or other improvements may be erected upon any land. I don't see where the septic tanks are erected, and it doesn't clearly state that a septic tank is an improvement. Maybe you need your legal.
Well, I will, but the common sense is why has it been assessed for 60 years as an improvement then?
Well, also, you talk about can't look into the future, we have to look at now. We have to look at 2011 in the past. One of the issues is you had the zoning changed. Even though you haven't changed the use of what you're using it for, the zoning's been changed. It's now retail commercial, and because if you decided to stop using that as a rental, guess what? It's retail commercial. You haven't stopped the use, I get it, on that one parcel, but you had the zoning changed.
Right, and Judy would like.
Is this not your ad?
That's put out by a realtor, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
2 parcels, retail, commercial.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with that.
Okay.
The issue of what the property is zoned as is a red herring. And if you follow the red herring down the rabbit hole, it's going to lead you to make a decision that is incorrect. Because the statutes require, and I'm looking at NRS 361.227, and that is under Exhibit 8, requires that improved land can be used, that the taxable value of real property shall appraise improved land consistent with the use to which improvements are being put. So you have to look at what those improvements are being used for. The septic system is a residential improvement that is supporting the residential home on the adjacent property. You don't tax by zone. The statutes and the code contemplate this kind of situation. If you look at Exhibit 10, NAC says that this is how you're supposed to value improved land. If it's being used consistent with its zoning, you do it this way. And sub B, 1B of NAC 361.122 says if it's not being used consistent with the zoning of the land or the general use of land in the area, then you have to assess it a different way. So the statutes are very clear that zoning has nothing to do with how land is being used. Now, you suggested that perhaps if somebody wanted to buy it as a residential property, I absolutely believe you are correct, Mr. Chairman, that they'd have to go try and convince the Board of Supervisors to rezone it so that it could be used that way. But and I doubt that that's going to happen because clearly this is a neighborhood that's in transition. The transition was caused by the introduction of the hospital out there, and so all the it's changing from what it was, which was single-family residential, to commercial, and that's slowly going that way. But that doesn't mean that Mr. Sheldrew is using his land as commercial now, even though he's trying to sell it. And when he does sell it, it will most likely be sold for commercial, or if he does sell it, it will most likely be used for commercial. But that isn't how you determine the assessed value under the statutes. The statutes require you look at actual use. Now, to your question, Mr. Chairman, with respect to NAC 361.113, can you restate the question because I wasn't quite sure I got it? Because it doesn't list a septic system?
It doesn't specifically. It talks about erected structures over the surface. It doesn't issue irrigation. It doesn't go with septics. I'm not seeing where, in certain instances, I think most people would, if their septic tank is not an improvement, they're not taxed on that, they'd be really happy. In this case, I see where the difference is, but I don't see where it says in here that a septic tank or a leach field is an improvement.
Okay, and you're right. The statute gives you broad definitions of what is an improvement, and the statutes and the NACs. And so let's look at NAC 361.113, and that's under Exhibit 6 of our packet. It says, okay, first of all, any, and then let's just forget building or fixture, and go to structure erected upon or affixed to the land. The septic system is affixed to the land that it is underneath the land. It's affixed. It's attached. It's laying there. And so, and our argument is that because it is functioning, it's a functioning sewer system, a septic system that services the residential house on the adjoining property, that it is doing its actual current use. It is sufficient. It is a complete, total septic system, and it's sufficient to identify it as a septic system for treating sewage. That's its purpose.
Okay, let me stop you just for a second. Under what you're looking at 361.1133.
Yes.
And it says any improvement means any building,
Comma, fixture
or other
structure.
So is it any building, any fixture, or any other structure?
Yeah, those are examples. And then if you look at right behind there, and it says, and including without limitation any of those improvements listed in paragraphs A and B of.
Right.
Okay, if that's the next page, then that has listed as the definition of real property, meaning houses, buildings, fences, ditches. Now, I don't know if that's, in your mind, I don't know that you can construct a ditch, but the statute has identified those as improvements. That's why it references, the NAC references those specific items in A as being improvements. Our point is, and I think it was borne out by the information that Mr. Sheldrew presented, is that a septic system is a more sophisticated structure than a fence or a ditch, but a fence or a ditch would count as an improvement under the statute. And so that is the argument. And in fact, with respect to improvements, that's why we included the list that you inquired about, the improvement list. They were included as improvements. This is the list that comes off of the assessor's own website. And they've included, I mean, they've got the 2 houses. There's 2 septic systems that are located, that are supposedly on parcel 06. The assessor calls it an improvement. They count, believe me, they count septic systems as improvements. So why it would be an improvement if it's on 06 and not on 05 makes no sense.
Okay, let me ask a question at the assessor's office before I lose my train of thought. Valuation is not based on zoning. How does the Department of Taxation or the state of Nevada base the tax cap of 8% on commercial property and 3% on residential property? How does that fit in?
Well, I'm not really sure it does because that's based on taxes. But, I mean,
Well, we're talking assessed value versus what the taxes are. So if a commercial has assessed, the taxable assessed value, but they're commercial, the cap is at 8%. If they're residential, it's 3%. How do they base that? Is it based on what the zoning was changed or what they paid in the past?
well, it's based on, well, all vacant property is going to get the higher cap. Because the statute says it has to be owner occupied in order to get a 3% cap. Or if it's a rental property, the rents have to be under fair market rents. Everything else would be categorized as the higher cap.
So, I mean, to me, the question isn't really, is the septic system an improvement? To me, the question is, where is the septic system located? And because you didn't have a professional land survey, we don't know. I mean, we can look and, like, guess and go, okay, well, somebody drew this line here, but it's like, how thick is the line? That has something to do with it. And these, I mean, to get down on that level, we need to have a professional land survey. And my question would be, why did you not? I mean, it seems like you went to a lot of trouble to really gather all the facts and.
Mr. Sheldrew can address that. And I think there's probably a 2-part answer to that. Go ahead.
Go ahead, if you could bring up your map that you provided to the board.
I'm sorry. Oh, that map?
Yes.
Oh, I got find it. Sorry.
If you look at the map that's provided in the Esri GeoMedia system, in the parcel map that I'm not sure if it was provided, that gives the actual dimensions of the properties. He doesn't show the upper parcel, but there are footages. And I will give him plenty of error because the actual 381-foot mark, excuse my shaking here, but is right approximately right there. I got to tell you, that parcel he's provided is almost right on, okay? So let's say it's off by 10 feet.
Let me stop you, because my question, I mean, yes, I did use line weights as an example, but the issue is more, I mean, there's a speck on a aerial photo. What is it? Is it a pile of snow? Is it a, we don't know. I mean, there's all kinds of other white specks on there.
Excuse me 1 second here. Yes, okay, so go to the next one. If you could, Dave. Again, I showed you this. This is the lids that I dug up and uncovered. They're right there. You can see them. Cement lids of the septic. Next picture. There's the outline of it. Next picture. That shows leach fields. Next one. There is a picture of it. So what aren't we seeing here? That's it. That's that little speck I just showed you on the map physically. That's it.
My question is more, I think that it's important to have a professional land survey done because I am not a professional land surveyor. You are not a professional land surveyor. And I think it's important to get somebody out there who does know what they're looking at and knows.
Okay. Let me address that before we go back. If we can go back 2 maps, please, or back to your yellow one. You're saying the septic system, which I claim goes out there 50 feet, you're claiming that that $3,000 is going to have to be spent to go show that that is an error of 60 feet. That's what you're saying, okay? Impossible. R.O. Anderson has said it's not going to happen. I have no problem if you guys want to go survey it. I, the property, I'm telling you, is the owner, I'm telling you where that septic's at. I know where it's at. The burden of proof shouldn't be on me to show you, after I show you pictures, show you on your own map that exists for you to say, doesn't exist there. Show me an accurate record the assessor is supposed to maintain under NRS that shows it not on it. He's supposed to have accurate maps and can't produce any. So, gosh, why does it keep falling back on me to say, oh yeah, now we've got a 60-foot filled that might be 3 feet off. It's not going to matter 3 feet. 10 feet won't matter. 15 feet's not going to matter.
Yes,
Well,
go ahead,
first
Joe.
of all, the burden of proof is on you. That is something that,
You're right, it does state that, so I will stand corrected.
okay. The second thing that I'd like to bring up is the Department of Health usually has maps that show where the actual septic and leach fields are. Did you contact them?
Destin Booth from the Health Department went out to the property with me.
Did he provide you a copy of the actual permit that shows the map of where it was placed?
I don't believe so. I don't know if he
Is he with
provided.
the city or is he with, is he? Should we ask him? I mean,
Well, Dave
they don't
Con.
have him anymore?
We did contact Dustin when this whole thing first started, because we wanted to know, we wanted to make sure that it was accurate.
Sure.
And so that's why we've been in touch with Dustin. And when Mr. Sheldrew, Dustin contacted Mr. Sheldrew because we were going to all meet out there and talk about it. Mr. Sheldrew showed up at Dustin's office and they went out and looked at it. The question, I mean, we obviously know that there's a septic tank, but the question that we have at the assessor's office is, so you have a septic system that's encroaching on another property. Again, we can't split the cost of that septic up. And so we have to tax it on one property. It's on this property that the house is on, so that's why we've taxed it on that property. So, I mean, if there's 60 feet of it encroaching on this property or 6 inches of it that's encroaching on this property, should we be valuing this property as residential because it only has, I mean, that's the issue that we have. That's why we brought it to you. One of the suggestions that was brought that we were kind of thinking about is, do a lot line deletion. If you were to do a lot line deletion, the whole property would be valued as residential because at that point it would be one parcel. And there's not a problem there. We could do that. Or maybe a lot line adjustment to take off that portion and add it to 6. That's an option.
Or if I can make a suggestion, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm so confident what I've told you is true, and I know where that septic's at. Obviously, there will be a survey done if I ever sell that parcel. If I'm wrong, I'll give you back taxes. Oh, the property will be. But I'm willing to, that's how confident I am in this issue.
It's almost, to me, regardless of where the septic tank is, it's still connected to the house, the primary residence.
Yes.
Mr. Sheldrew had a little rebuttal. Can we make our rebuttal comments?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So my concern about this parcel mostly is use. And under NRS 361.227, determination of taxable value, vacant land, obviously, we considered it vacant, but Mr. Sheldrew keeps referring to number 2, improved land consistently with the use to which the improvements are being put. Now, the use that the septic tank was being put is for the use on the adjacent parcel, not the subject parcel. 2 points about that. One, the use is a non-conforming use. It should have never been approved. Talked to the building department. They would never allow that. And the second point is the 2 parcels having to be used together. They do not have to exist as one parcel, and they do not support each other because as they're used now, if the portion is on both parcels and the septic was cut off, a remedy could be, without destroying the use of the adjacent parcel for single-family residence, there are water and sewer lines on both sides of the property. So it doesn't eliminate the use of that parcel, and it doesn't remove the non-conforming use of that parcel as well. And just so we're clear, for assessment purposes, when one is estimating market value, it is necessary to determine which of the competing uses is the highest and best use. Highest and best use may be defined as that use which will generate the highest net return to the property over a period of time. Additionally, the highest and best use must be a legal use. This means not only that the use cannot be criminal, but that it must be permitted under local administrative regulations such as zoning. I wanted that to be read in the record. And I have one last comment. If every vacant parcel had a fence put on it, would the use change for that parcel? And a fence is an improvement, I agree. But does it clearly, is that improvement sufficient to allow the identification or establish the current actual use? That's it for me.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. You have a final comment you'd like to make?
I do. He made the comment about it shouldn't have been allowed. He provided you in his records, page 23, where he says it would be in violation. And what's stated here, except as otherwise provided in this section, an individual sewage disposal system must be located on the same lot as a building or structure that the system serves. That's what he's referring to. The next line, right after that, the administrative authority may approve the use of a part of an abutting lot to provide additional space for an individual sewage disposal system or any part thereof if the individual sewage disposal system owner can show proper cause, which we have, a legal right of the owner, I'm the legal owner, to use the abutting land and transfer and do this and provide an easement. It's
Well,
clear. It's clear.
I understand, but my interpretation of that is that you would need a special use permit to be able to do that from the Planning Commission. Is that accurate, Roy, since you were on the Planning Commission? Okay. But yes, the uses are allowed, but you can do a lot of things, but you need a lot of things require a special use permit. If it's supposed to be contained on the same parcel, same subject parcel as the building, and if it's not, it's on another one, yes, you can do that with a special use permit.
And can we agree the fact that it was allowed by Carson City and inspection forms were signed off in '63 that occurred? Can you prove it wasn't?
Well, unless I can resurrect Bill Gonai, that probably would know about this.
Bill Gonai could have done it for us, okay?
Yes, absolutely, and so we can't go back that way. So it's kind of hard, and like you say, we have to look at the present. And
that's why I'm referring to the law here, because I haven't violated a code. And second, the same section that he refers, that's where it's got the 150 feet for the wellhead. That's why it had to be located there, and that's why they had to approve it.
Okay, and it does sound like a lot line adjustment would be the easiest cure, probably. And like you say, it's not going to go from commercial back to residential. It's not going to go backwards, probably, because the highest and best use is a hospital medical complex that was built around your residential property. What a great thing that, it appears what a great thing that could be upon the sale of the property for you. Yeah.
And if I just might add, I mean, there's another remedy, and it's the remedy that we keep pointing to in NRS 361.227. The unit of appraisal must be a single parcel unless the location of improvements causes two or more parcels to function as a single parcel. In this case, the location of the septic system is causing it to function with the adjoining parcel to provide sewage treatment services for the residents on the adjoining parcel. That also is a solution, instead of a lot line adjustment or this, that, and the other thing that's necessary. So, I mean, I'm going to throw that out to you, but that's why we keep saying they're functioning, because of the location of that improvement, these two units are functioning together today in actual use. That's how that's what's happened. In the future, who knows?
So, and with that, I mean, we could also do hook up to city sewer, because you're selling it as commercial, and quite frankly, the comment about an easement for that, probably, if someone's building it commercial, I'm sure.
But we're not using it as a commercial. That's the point.
And it was zoned, the zoning has been changed, so there's been some intent to sell it as commercial, make it commercial, keep it as commercial. So there's an intent there, is there not?
And nobody's shown me anything where it says what you intend to do, because then you're going to be getting in everybody's mind as what they're going to do with, you think they're going to do with property to figure out how you should assess it. That's why that is to be assessed on actual use. That's what makes it so much easier than all the machinations we're going through right here.
Okay, fair enough. Yes, Adrienne.
Mr. Chair, just when you go into deliberations, if you vote in favor of staff, then I'm assuming that the appellant would probably appeal to the state. So for the record, they're going to ask for the record, if you could methodically go through your steps in determining how you come to your conclusion. Either way, if you could just do that. So, number one, is this or isn't this vacant land? Is there improvements? Yes, no, and just go through the statutes, answering the questions, and then deliberate so that you're kind of methodical when you actually make the motion. Is this commercial? How does that, relate to whether or not this is improved land? Is it improved land? Is it, does the statute 361227 come into play with regard to the two properties being inseparable, having to be, considered as one property? And all of that, so that way it's clear for the record the reasons why you voted the way you did, instead of just going to the motion.
Well, thanks for making it easy on us.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Yes, Mr.
Sorry. So, in the fact that we do mass appraisal, so we're looking at large areas of land to come up with a market value for land. When the situation arises like this, where we have the opportunity to look at one parcel, to determine whether or not we're over market value or not, we get to nail down into this general area. What we found is the fact that, in fact, this property is overassessed, in the fact that we were using other commercial properties outside the area. So we are actually coming back to you at the next meeting with a request to lower all the commercial property in this general area, not just this one property, but all of the area, in order to do that. And I believe that Mr. Massal here has what we would request, that this land value be lowered to this time, and then we would bring back all the other properties for next time.
So if we determine to lower the land value of this, then we need to equalize the rest of the adjoining
That's correct.
parcels around.
Right. So in your motion, if you decide to go residential, great. If you decide to go commercial, then we need to lower the value to what the actual value should
So
be.
if we go back with this as residential with an improvement, what tax relief is he going to get versus the tax relief as you're talking about commercial?
Actually, it's going to increase. The taxable value of the single-family residence would increase based on new analysis of data.
Well, we can't increase. We have to do just the commercial.
No, I mean, if they change it back to single-family residence, that's one of the reasons for that.
No, I'm just talking about your valuation. I'm not talking about the zoning change.
Well, no, what we're talking about was, on Mr. Sheldrew's appeal, he's using values that was 3 years ago in determining what the property value should be, and obviously that's not the current market value for residential.
So the assessed valuation that you're proposing to lower in here, I think it was from 900,000. I don't know right offhand.
931,751 to 828,000.
So
and,
where?
289,800 assessed.
So where would it go if we did an assessable taxable value residential with improvements on the subject property?
We actually did, I had Mr. Massau do values for residential so that if you chose to go back to residential, you could determine what the value would be. These are residential.
These are residential. Decide to change this whole thing back to residential. These are comps that support the value. Thank you, Dave.
I'm not sure if this is a good time to bring this up or not, but I do want to point out that in the comps that we received in the packet, the comp that was determined to be most similar to this, I think it's 1625 Vista. I contacted the listing agent, and that's actually been on the market for upwards of 4 years, so I don't know if this is the right time to bring this up, but I think that it's a little high, and I just wanted to kind of note that because I think that the figure that had been brought up in the packet was a little bit high because it was mostly based on that.
Which is,
No, it's a listing.
Right, and that's just informational stuff for you.
supported information.
Right, we went to the State Board of Equalization one year, and they said that they would like listing information, so that's why we include listing information as well as the sales information for you.
Okay.
So just to get down to it, right now, the taxes that he'd be paying are roughly $9,000 a year if it's unimproved commercial.
Correct.
And if it's improved residential, what would that
It
tax?
depends on what value you put on the property.
Okay, would it significantly decrease because it's considered residential as far as
Yes.
taxable value?
Yes.
Okay, how significantly would that be? I mean, just give me in round figures, because the decimals are confusing to me.
Really quick, I believe I was paying $870 a year on it.
And that was based on the valuation?
residential
from
improvement,
three
yes.
3 years ago?
Well,
Is that-
before I went to 9,000, that's the last tax bill I think I paid, give or take.
Oh, so that was probably 3 years ago, or was that
Yeah,
2011?
there's about an $8,000 difference.
Right, the 15-16, you can see it up here.
Okay.
15-16 taxes were $857.09. By valuing it as commercial, it went to $9,064.20.
Right, so if we went back to residential,
It depends on the value. At that point, the property was valued at $115,000.
So changing the zoning to commercial and listing it for 1.2 million is drastically helped. I can see why you wanted to change the zoning to commercial now. So that's, okay.
Right, but as mentioned, in our viewpoint, the zoning is totally independent of the assessments.
Sure, but I understand. Okay, what does everybody think? Yes, we're in discussion now.
So, in light of recent recommendations as far as like clarifying what our reasoning is, I'll start.
Okay.
So I think that the septic system is an improvement. However, I don't think that we can determine what lot it's on. And in fact, I think there's a lot of evidence that it's on the adjacent lot, 06. And I mean, I think that could be disproven if you had a professional land survey. However, given NAC 444 and the requirements to have a special exception made if it's on a different lot, I think that there would be evidence that it was on that lot if that was the case. Furthermore, I think that the lot ending in 05, 075 through and 05, does function as its own separate lot, and that the septic system should be valued with 06, 075 through and 06, because it is more an encroachment onto 05 than it is its own separate improvement on 05. It's more appropriate to consider it as part of the house structure that sits on 06. So.
I just had a question on intent at the time that it was rezoned. Does that not show some factual, I know the word intent there is when we rezoned it from 11 to date, it's still commercial and should be appraised at commercial, even though the best use is residential?
Well, sir, I'm not sure that they're actually, I know their argument's not the intent. It's the actual use and the improvement that they say is on the property. So I'm not sure intent actually comes into the argument at all.
I just keep going back to NRS 361.2272A. I realize that the septic is benefiting the other parcel, 06, so I understand why it should be viewed as one parcel, because one does help the other.
If it is on that property.
Well, because it helps the other parcel function, even though it's on the opposing.
But we don't know if it's.
That's the thing, is we don't know if it's on 05.
6 or 05.
Yeah.
So, I think that it benefiting the adjacent property is not the sole factor in determining can 05 function by itself. And I think that the answer is, yeah, 05 can function by itself just fine. I mean, they're trying to sell it as its own separate. I know that intent is not something, I get it. But, I mean, the fact is that somebody could come in, build something, and that's just an encroachment. It's not that big of a deal. Like, I think that just because, assuming that it's even on 05, just because the septic system is on 05, does not mean that 05 can only serve as a placeholder for a septic system.
So with that said, are we ready to make a motion?
I have something else.
Oh.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Mallory. Then I'll-
Well, so looking at these comps, I would actually say that the market value of this property, so the assessor sort of mentioned in our packet that an appropriate valuation would be $600,000 an acre. I personally think that we would be closer to 575 or 550, just given that 1675 or whatever it is, 1625 Vista Lane has been on the market for so long. I think that so if the valuation was at $550,000 an acre, 1.38 acres, then that would bring your taxable value to $759,000, which is also determined market value. It's worth noting. And if we were to go with 575 at 1.38 acres, that would take your taxable value to $793,500. And I think that would be an appropriate thing to do because that is the value of the property. And I think that you saw that value when you had the zoning changed, so.
Boy, when you change zoning, the devil's in the details, isn't it? It just really, had the zoning not been changed, would this even be an issue? That's just something in my mind, because not that it's relevant or not, but it does throw out there an idea that obviously going down the road, which we can't determine that without a crystal ball, but the intent going down the road is that the value of the property is much more valuable by changing the zoning from residential to commercial. So, I mean, it's one of those things that really gets, there's a lot of details here that need to be looked at. So with my comment, I'll be quiet. I'd like to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. I'll recommend the assessor's office parcel number 007-531-05 be reduced from $931,751 to $828,000 or $289,800 assessed value.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I have discussion.
Do we need to discuss after the second, correct? Yes. Yes, we can. We have a motion by Roy. We don't have a second yet. Do we discuss the motion? Okay, okay. Do I have a second before discussion?
I'll second that.
So my discussion would be that we amend the motion to change the taxable value to $793,500, which would place the price per acre at $575,000.
So we have a motion and a second and an amendment to the motion. Do we need a second for that, or do we need to make, okay, do I have a second to Valerie's amendment to the Roy's motion?
And I'll second that as well.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion with the amendment with the second? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Now to the appellant, the date of, you can appeal this to the Nevada Board of Equalization, Nevada State Board of Equalization, and that date's going to be
March 10th is the deadline, and that's a Friday.
March 10th.
Yes.
And I want to thank you both very much for coming. I'd like to thank the assessor and everybody, but thank you for the work that you've done, because obviously this is close to you. I mean, and you've shown a lot of work here, and we do appreciate that. So,
May I ask if we can get a transcript of this? I can download the video?
It's streamed, so it'll be on video.
I'll leave my card and you'll let me know how to do that?
On the website, yeah,
Oh.
just go to the website and click on.
Call me and I can.
Yeah, we can walk you through it.
And that's sufficient for an appeal?
It should be.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
because
this
it's
is going to
recorded.
take a lot of this.
It's all recorded.
It's going further than that. Thank you.
yeah, just go to carson.org, and they'll walk you through, but all the agendas, meetings, all that stuff, it's kind of hard to find sometimes, but yeah, the audio should be on there currently.
We can't find anything online on the assessor except for the property record, so.
Oh, you go to carson.org, and then under government, and it'll have meetings and agendas for all the boards
Okay.
and commissions. So,
If you just,
She can give you an audio.
so anyway, they'll just,
Okay.
I will email you the link. Once
Perfect.
it's on there, I will send it to you directly. The download.
oh, stop it, tech girl.
Okay, I'll send you.
Okay, okay, great.
I'll write myself.
Okay.
If you don't.
Can we take a break? I'm sure somebody might want to use the facilities. So I'd like to take a 5-minute break and come back at 11 o'clock.
consonants and friends. You have my evidence in front of you. Okay, if you would turn to attachment 1, is just simply a list of the subjects that I'm going to be talking about. Are you with me? Okay. Attachment 2 is a decision by the State Board of Equalization. If you go to the 3rd page, you will see that they decided that the taxable value would be $65,000 on the 22nd of October 2015, which is a year from last fall. If you go to the next page, attachment 3, you will see that the assessor, in his notice of valuation that I received a couple of months ago in December, changed the value from $65,000 to $92,000, and which is about a 50% increase. Half of 60 is 30, 60 and 30 is 90, so it's roughly 50%. And I certainly feel that that is unwarranted, and I'm going to try to show you why. It seems to me as if the State Board's decision was ignored, and I have some legal issues with that. But in the event that after the end of my presentation, you folks do not send the valuation back to 65,000, this matter certainly will be going to the State Board, and I will show them what happened and so forth. The legality of that also needs to be resolved. The next page, attachment 4, are 3 adjoining lots, mine being number 2 in there at the corner of Kuntz and Baker. Lot number 3 is virtually identical to mine. The address is 750 Kuntz Lane. We're going to be looking at that sale. That sale took place roughly a year ago from now, and we're well within the assessor's time frame, and we'll look at that. Another point I want to make is that Baker Street is the dividing line between the city and a county. The properties to the west, to the left, are now called urban, and to the east, to the right, are called rural. In the rural land usage, can have horses, can have, they get tax breaks for agriculture and similar county type of benefits. To the west, where my lot lives, the property restrictions are the same as in the center of town. You can have a cat and a dog and that kind of thing, but that's all. No large animals, no horses, no llamas. You can't even have goats to keep the sagebrush down. I'd also draw your attention to the lower left corner, at the corner of Center Drive and Kuntz, labeled PN. That is a catch basin for floodwater, and we're going to talk about that more in the future. Next page, attachment 05, is the general flood zone for this part of town. As you can see, the land slopes to the northeast. It's the former Voltaire Canyon, most of which has been filled in. The horizontal blue line near the bottom is Kuntz Lane, and it is its own flood zone. A point I wish to make, though, is that the tendency is to drain to the northeast, so the flood zone on Kuntz Lane does not go out forever to Edmonds, to the new freeway. It's just this section where my lot is. The white buildings in the left of that are what I refer to as the Rayleigh Shopping Center. It also has Kohl's and other things in there, but that's what those white buildings are. Next page is just more specifics on the flood zone. The red box, the red rectangle, is my lot between Baker and Silver Sage. My point about this is that for any sale to be comparable to my lot, it would have to be first 1 acre. The lot would have to have a flood zone at its front door and not allow horses. The only sale that I know of that meets that criteria is my neighbor to the east, which was number 3 in the previous slide. Going on to attachment 6 is a series of photographs. The first one, picture number 1, is the source of the flooding. The picture was taken looking west in front of my property, which begins at the end of the sidewalk there, right at the crosswalk. And that, I want to point out that winter, as we're having now, usually does not produce much flooding as everything is cold and sluggish. The worst is the summer, when a warm front comes up from the Gulf of Mexico. It has a lot of energy in it, and when it hits the mountains and cools, there is a veritable downpour at that point, a cloudburst, if you will. Some of you, if you live here in Carson City, you've probably been through that a couple of years ago and previous years. You should have experienced that. The torrent coming down Coons Lane is so strong at that time, you cannot safely walk across the street in there. For several years, Raleigh Shopping Center up near Carson Street, where those traffic lights are, was severely flooded. You probably, some of you remember that. The city made improvements to reduce that flooding. One of them was constructing a storm drain down the center of Coons Lane. It goes from Carson Street roughly to the new freeway at Edmonds. But all of the inlets for that storm drain are up near Raley's, near the Carson Street intersection. There are no inlets in the vicinity of Sage or Silver Sage or my lot. As you can see, there are none. The bushes on the right side are on top of a berm that guides the water away from the houses there. Behind the fence that you can see is a large ditch which carries away any water that happens to go over the berm. And that ditch empties into my lot, of course. The engineers realized that the storm drain could rather easily be plugged up, and then Raley's would be flooded. So they built the catch basin that I mentioned before. It's just on the other side of this sidewalk. We're going to look at it in a minute. The basin is essentially a buffer with water going in and out, much as an accordion. It goes back and forth and go either direction. In the picture below, in picture number 2, that's just to the left of this crosswalk, that is the basin. And the inlet outlet is that concrete structure just above the sidewalk. The basin was full the first week of January of this year, a month ago, and it was also full in the first week of February, meaning that the storm drain was plugged. The point here is that plugging of that storm drain is not rare. It's a relatively common event. But when that's plugged, most all of the water comes straight down Coons Lane at very high velocity, and that's when my lot and my neighbors get flooded.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
So when you're looking at picture 1, picture 2 is obviously on the left side of picture 1.
Correct. It's
Okay.
at the left side of that crosswalk. It's on the, when I showed you the map before, it's at the corner of Center Drive.
It's the park that's covered with snow in this picture.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay, going on to the next page is a picture of the intersection of Baker and Coons Lane. And as you can see, there's no ditch, and no ditch is possible there for 2 reasons. One, there's no room at the corner, but secondly, pedestrians have to walk across there. Pedestrians have to walk across there at nighttime, and if there were a ditch, there'd be a huge liability. So there's no ditch, and the city will not put in a ditch because of that. And so the water coming down Coons Lane simply flows into my lot and to my neighbor's house as well. Currently, there are people living in that corner house, and if you drive by there sometime, you'll see that it's all sandbagged right now because it gets flooded regularly. Picture 4 is my garage, which is on the right side of my lot. It gets flooded regularly. I've owned that lot for 3 years, and I've shoveled mud out of that garage 2 times now. Picture 5 is just a sample of the buried concrete that I have found. And picture 6 is similarly. When I bought that lot, it was level, covered with sagebrush. There was none of this stuff showing. The house was, this lot was owned by the Kuntz family. I bought it from their estate. Louis Kuntz built this, and he worked for the Nevada Highway Department for 30 years. His brother was the famous John Kuntz, who was the longest-serving Secretary of State in Nevada's history. So a little connection there. In any event, he must have hauled in all kinds of scrap concrete from other places, because some of it is tiled bathroom concrete, which I assume came from the destruction of the former railroad depot that's up near William Street there, where the park is now. When they took the park out, they took out a lot of stuff, and he just had access to lots and lots of scrap concrete, and he just buried it all over that lot. Next page, picture number 7, is a pit that I dug trying to get the concrete out. I have a smaller garden tractor with a little bucket on the front, and I have to dig a pit to get anything out, because otherwise the tractor will tip over. And I cannot get that dirt out of there because there's still so much concrete buried in that pile right there. Picture 8 is just more concrete debris that was left there. Next page, number 9, is a drain pipe that I uncovered. I have no idea where either the inlet or the outlet is. I'll find that out, but I can only surmise it had something to do with the flooding. Picture 10 is one of 4 concrete vaults that I have found. This particular vault, I dug down, took the dirt out down to 12 feet, and I didn't reach the bottom. I assume it goes down to 15 feet or something like that. The current, the trustee of the estate is the son of Louis. His name is William Kuntz, and I asked him many of these questions in writing. He refused to answer anything, which is not surprising because he's a lawyer now located in Oregon. And even though he comes to Carson City periodically for different things, he refuses to see me. He refuses to answer any questions as to what the intent of all of this stuff. I assume there's a liability issue there. Next page, number 11, is my neighbor to the west. He, over time, put in a drip irrigation system, put in a small orchard and so forth. But when his water bill got upwards of $300 a month, he just quit. All the trees died, and it's just reverting back to sagebrush and old cars, and to the right there's more junk and debris that he's put up there. On picture number 12 at the bottom is my neighbor on the east, and you can see he just uses it as for storing junk and trash also. The point being is that water is so precious and so expensive that these large lots cannot be made like a golfing green. It's just prohibitive. So all it's really good for, since you can't have horses or agriculture, that kind of thing, is just storing stuff, just junk. Okay, next page has to do with the sale of 750 Kuntz, which is on the corner. That property was listed for sale for $250,000 for literally for years, for as long as I was familiar with the south end of Carson. It never sold. It went into bankruptcy. I would guess the reason it didn't sell is because of flooding. You can see the flood marks on the side of the building easily, particularly the garage door. The flood marks are well marked on there. So it went into bankruptcy, it came out of bankruptcy, and then if you go to the next page, attachment 8, at the bottom of the column, you can see that it was purchased roughly a year ago from now for $192,500. And there's currently a family living in there. But what I want to do is the next page is the tax valuation of that property. The land was evaluated at $96,000, which is similar to mine, and the improvements at $110,000. And I challenge that ratio. And so the next page, attachment number 10, is my attempt at a little math. Item 1, I contacted by telephone multiple appraisers, estimators, and contractors about the actual replacement cost for a structure. Nobody would do it for $100 a square foot. The minimum that anybody that I found was, and it was confirmed by the estimator, is $110 per square foot. And remember that our replacement cost is more than new because you have to take the old out and add the new. But typical is $120 per square foot in the Carson City area. Some are more, but nothing goes below 110. So using 110 per square foot, just do a little calculation here. The age is 42 years, depreciates at 1.5%, so that's 63% depreciation. So the replacement cost, using my 110, at 2,100 square feet times 0.63 would be $133,000 compared to the assessor's 110. Now, the total of the land plus the building cannot exceed the market value. And the market value is $200,000 roughly. He bought it for less than 200, but we'll just round it off to 200. So if I take 200 and I subtract the cost of replacement cost, I come up with a land value of $66,000 as opposed to the appraiser's $90,000. My calculation is only for the main house. I did not take into account the garage, which has been, one half of it has been finished off into a home exercise room. It did not take into account the large porch that's around it, didn't take into account the sauna and hot tub, the fencing and so forth. Had I included those, the replacement cost would have been larger and market value would stay the same, so the land value would be somewhere around $40,000. But this is just the minimum. Okay, item number 2 there is just to see what did this assessor use. So first we take his $110,000 for improvements and remove the depreciation, and we come up with $175,000. Then his replacement cost would then be $175,000 divided by the square footage of the house, and that comes out to $82 a square foot. And if I'd included the garage and other things, it would have been even lower, probably down in $60 a square foot.
Mr. Hublu, I apologize for interrupting you. I have it up there for you.
You have what up there?
This is the valuation of the house next door.
Yeah, okay. In any event, my point here is that no contractor would replace anything in that house for that kind of money, roughly $80 per square foot. So I think that his evaluation of the land for 350 Coons is wrong. Next page is attachment number 11. I had Loomis Engineering calculate out what it would take to fill that land in so I could build a house on it safe from flooding. And the third page of that is a diagram of what it would take with a minimum amount of fill so that it wouldn't flood. And as you can see, the sides are sloping, and the house would be like it was perched on top of a mound, something like a pitcher's mound in baseball, and it would not be very attractive. I would not do that, but nonetheless, this is what I asked for, and that's what they gave me. The next page, attachment 12, is an estimate from Armac Construction. And if you turn to the second page, you can see that they would do that for for over $75,000. Now, currently, that estimate is way too low for a couple of reasons. One, there's far more buried concrete there than they estimated. And secondly, the new freeway has taken most of the available dirt fill for the freeway, and therefore the cost to get fill dirt today is much greater than when this estimate was done, because there just isn't that much available because the freeway has taken most of it. Another point is that the house, which burned down in around 1970, was heated by oil, and the oil tank is still there. It needs to be removed, and I do not know if the soil beneath it is contaminated and toxic and needs special hazard removal. That I don't know. The only way that I would build a house on that lot would be to erect a retaining wall in the back and fill the lot level higher than Kuntz Lane, so you could use the whole lot. If I did that, the cost of the original purchase plus the additional fill and the erection of a retaining wall would take that part of it just up to about $200,000, very close to $200,000. Then you build a house on top of that. The added cost of that would probably take it up to close to $500,000, and the sales of the houses in that area simply would not support that kind of money, and it would lose money when it was eventually sold. That concludes my presentation. I hope that you will set the tax value back to $65,000 as the state board did, and prevent any needless litigation of this nature. Any questions?
Thanks, sir. We're going to go to the assessor's office for their appeal, and then we'll come back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Denise Gillette with the Carson City Assessor's Office. And I'm not going to go into all of the information that's in the packet because it's it's all pretty well laid out for you. But what it comes down to with this parcel is that the subject parcel is truly not different than any other parcel on Kuntz Lane, which is almost completely developed. And so what it So what happens is, with this type of parcel, yes, in fact, it is. The front, or just the front, probably 1/3 of the parcel is located in flood zone AO, which does impact the parcel, absolutely. That flood zone continues all the way down Kuntz Lane, so it affects all of those parcels. I spoke with an engineering firm, I spoke with planning, I spoke with engineering, and they said, in fact, there is no reason why this parcel could not be developed. It shouldn't have any more impact other than what he said with the vaults and the buried items on his parcel. There should be no reason, without just bringing in some fill and some creative landscaping, that they would have any problem whatsoever developing this parcel. If you look at page 56, what I did is I took 2 parcels in 2014 that in fact were developed, were built by a developer and then sold, and I compared them again to 2 parcels that were not located in that flood zone, and truly with the exception of the lower quality home, they sold right within range of each other. So the impact of the additional fill does not play a part in the market. So truly, to treat this parcel any different than any other parcel on Kuntz, we would not have the support to do so due to these sales right here. Mr. Hublud brought up his parcel next door to him, which I understand his reasoning. I was looking at it and I understand where he was coming from. The problem with that sale is that it was not an arm's length transaction. It transferred once as a deed in lieu, and then it sold after that, and it was in very poor condition. It still is. And so not only did we not take that sale into consideration, for the fact that it was not an arm's length transaction, it was not taken into consideration because we actually have sales of vacant parcels. And when we're valuing land, we prefer to use vacant parcels versus an improved parcel with an older improvement, because if you try to deduct, one method of, when you have a lack of land sales, what you can do out of last resort is you can take properties and you can take a recent sale, and you can come up with the improvement value and you can deduct it, and then there lies the land value. The problem with that is it's almost impossible to be accurate unless you're using a new improvement, because otherwise you're adding in depreciation, deferred maintenance. I mean, it's just, there's too many aspects of it that just would not be accurate. So we would never have taken that sale of that parcel next door to him and ever considered it in the valuation of his parcel. So. And then I didn't know if this mattered, because I'm not sure. I did quite a bit of market analysis, and I don't know that horses maybe come into play one way or another, but if they do, we did just get confirmation that his parcel could have horses. So I don't know if that matters. We didn't take it into consideration, but I wanted to make sure that maybe he knew. So, you want to go?
If I might, please. Mr. Hublu was mentioning the house next door. When you look at his attachment number 10, and you go through the replacement cost, well, actually, if you go up here to the screen, you can see the single-family house has a total replacement cost of $246,601. That is $116 a foot. It's not $100, it's not $80, it's $116 a foot. When you look at his calculation for number 1, it says replacement cost $110 a square foot times 2122 square footage times 0.63. Well, you can't, you have to take it times the percentage percentage that's there, not this is the amount of depreciation that he's getting. So, let me show you real quick, I'll show you. When you look at the depreciation down here, this is the percent good that you multiply it by. He's doing the inverse. So he's taking just the other part of it, and that's the wrong way to do it. The maximum depreciation you can get is 75%. So right now, he's getting 63%. So you take that 63% depreciation, subtract it from the actual replacement cost. That's where you're getting the numbers right here for $91,242. The State Board of Equalization, Mr. Hublu, I'm sorry. I'm trying to pronounce it right. Mr. Hublu did say that he did go to the board, and he did go to the board. The board did lower it to $65,000. That's good for 1 year. That doesn't mean it's going to be $65,000 from here on out. We have to determine what the land value is going to be on a yearly basis. The State Board of Equalization lowered the land value by 10%. That's what we're proposing here. We will, because of all of the improvements that are on this property, we will maintain a 10% discount on this property until all of those items are removed. That's what we're proposing. We have additional information. We have last Thursday was flooding. It was the second flood of the year. Lands are all saturated. We actually have pictures. We went out and took pictures. I live right in the cul-de-sac right behind that property. I pass this property on a daily basis. There are no raging torrents of water going down this street. This was taken at 9 o'clock. It was pouring. And you can see that the Mayor's Park is flooding. It does it every time it rains. I did take another picture of the first flood when the rim, the water was so high on Mayor's Park that it was about ready to overflow. And Mr. Hublu's property is no worse than the pictures you see right there. This property does not have raging water going through it when it rains. It does have flooding. My property had more flooding on it than this one did. It does have flooding. We understand that. But we have to value it based on the current market value.
And if you look at the photos, what I wanted to point out is we do address the fact that the front of his parcel is in a flood zone. If you look at the first photos, this is his parcel, and you can see that the first two pages are his parcel. There is some puddling on the front of his parcel. It's right there. You can see it, absolutely. Now, if you can go down to the third, or go to the third page, this is Edmonds, which is not in a flood zone. So the city has taken the steps, I believe, necessary to protect these properties. Maybe not so much on Edmonds, but on Coons. If you look at and he had talked about the split of Baker. And so you can see the 3 pictures that I have on the page 2. This is going down Coons. So 2 of them are his and 1 is after Baker. So there's not a lot of difference. And so we didn't take these photos to say he was right or wrong. We want to make sure it's right. And if he's having an impact due to his flood zone, we need to, it impacts all of Coons Lane, and we need to address that. But honestly, if you look at Coons Lane versus Edmonds, and then also if you look at the last page, this was the emergency mapping system that the city used to kind of tell everybody where the issues were in Carson City. And you can see all of the dots, whether it's road closure or caution. There is nothing on Coons Lane to tell us that this area is directly impacted by the flooding water. And I would hope that if it was going to happen, it would have happened last Friday. There was so much water. So, honestly, what our issue is here is the fact that he has these vaults, he has these the concrete, the piping, and we completely acknowledge that. And so we are willing to lower his property value, the 10% that the state also lowered it, and we will continue to keep it 10% lower of market value. It will never stay at the value. It could either go up or go down. It's always dependent upon market value, but we're willing to give him that discount until the time he can come in and get those items rectified.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's have the appellant come up. Do we have any questions for the appellant? I have a question for you, sir.
Yes.
The vaults,
Yes.
were they uncovered after you purchased the property?
Yes. When I bought the property, the land was level, just sagebrush was growing on it.
Based on your expertise of what you did in a past life, what are the vaults considered to be used for?
As I mentioned, my best guess is they were used as the catch basin is to catch water during.
So it was some form of water containment in the.
That's a guess, though.
Okay.
Well, one of the 4 is a septic tank, as we talked about earlier.
Okay. So a vault would be equivalent to a cement structure that contains some kind of liquid.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'd like to rebut some of the things that was just said. Okay. First of all, the flood zone does not continue down all the way Coons Lane to Edmonds. If the assessor wanted to make that point, they should have brought a flood zone map to show that it is, because it does not. I showed you clearly that the slope of the land is to the northeast. So the flooding tapers off at Baker Street and goes to the northeast following the old Voltaire Canyon. It does not flood down there, and her analogies that the properties farther east on Coons have the same, subject to the same flooding as mine is bonkers. Secondly, it was mentioned that the sale was an arm's length sale. I don't know what that means. That house next door, 250 Coons Lane, was sold by a regular real estate agency using a regular real estate broker, and anybody in the world could bid on it and buy it in a normal, usual way. How the title transferred is independent of the sale. Yes, it came out of bankruptcy, so there was some funky things with regard to the deed, but it was sold in a normal sales process. I also object to the photographs of the recent rains. I made it quite clear that there's not much flooding in the wintertime. The majority of the flooding comes in the summertime when warm fronts come up from the Gulf of Mexico with a lot of energy and they hit the mountains. And it just dumps, and that's when we get hailing and so forth. And I can assure you that nobody could walk across Kuntz Lane during those downpours. And that there is nothing to stop, once that catch basin is full, there's nothing to stop that water from going straight down my property, which is what happens, which is why my garage gets flooded, and why, if you look at the flood marks on the house on the corner of Baker and Kuntz Lane, you'll see that the flooding comes up about a foot onto their property, which conforms to what the flood zone maps say.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, do we have any questions for the assessor or the
Yes, I
appellant?
do. Dave, do we know what this pipe is? We have no idea whether that's city, state, what it is, what it does? Okay, because we heard this, I was on the board when we heard this in 15, and I remember the vaults and all the cement and all the things. And this pipe concerns me, it really does. We have no idea who it belongs to. It was on the property at the time. We don't know if it's still a functioning pipe. We don't know if it belongs to the city. We don't know if it belongs to the state. And what does it do? That's my question.
Sir, we don't know. We have no idea what it is. But that's why we offered to do the same, that the state was given a 10% reduction in the value until it's repaired. If you look up here on the board, this is a current FEMA map. And as you can tell, the flood zone does go all the way down Kuntz. Edmonds is on the right-hand side right there.
So is the floodplain on there
The blue? Right.
May I interject? The green is the flood zone, right?
Green, blue, yeah.
Yeah, there is no going farther down Kuntz. The green ends right there about 2/3 of the way down.
This is just the FEMA map that's...
I'm just saying that your conjecture was that originally is that the flood zone goes all the way down Kuntz. It doesn't. It ends right where that green ends.
Right, it doesn't go up to the...
It doesn't go to
Okay,
Edmonds.
fair enough. We can see it on the map there.
You're right, that is Solomon, that's not...
It's not Edmonds.
I apologize, that's my...
Correct, and
That's
my
my-
photos did reflect within the flood zone, except for the Edmonds photos, but the Kuntz photos were within the flood zone.
Okay, so it looks like, obviously, this being the flood zone, it looks like Mayor's Park that was created, what, probably 10 years ago? I don't know if it's been around much longer, but that's a detention basin. It looks like it's working, and it's doing what it's supposed to do. As far as flooding in the town, you know, I know 97, 2005, this year, I noticed where all the sandbags and everything are, and there's no big flooding in the, it appears to me that the sandbags come out during the winter, around the first of the year, where the flooding comes down from Kings Canyon and Ash Canyon and everything else. I don't notice that during the summertime months when we get some sort of a rainstorm. It's not anything like I'd see in Vegas or Phoenix. You know, so it does appear to me that the flooding is more common in my own perception during the winter. You know, this is one of the tough ones. I think that whatever the vaults are, I mean, we know there's one that's a septic tank, and we don't know what the other three are for. And this was an estate sale, and it wasn't a true length arms transaction, that I do not perceive that was disclosed in escrow, that there were 4 vaults there, why they would put them or anything like that. So my feeling is because of the vaults, there should be some sort of reduction. I agree with the assessor's office on there. And there's some other pipes that were probably connected to the vaults as well. But that's my comments. Do you have anybody else for questions, comments? Dave?
Mr. Chairman, if you do instruct us to do a discount on it, we ask you to put on the record that it remain there until the vaults or the underlying improvements or underlying concrete is removed. That way we can, we don't have to keep coming back.
Good recommendation. comments or questions, I'd like to entertain a motion.
I move to place a permanent discount on, oh God, I was not ready with APN. Sorry.
Yeah, don't, permanent. I wouldn't say permanent.
Okay, I move to place a discount on the taxable value of parcel number 009131104 until the time that the underground debris and miscellaneous concrete is removed in the amount of 10%, which will reduce the total taxable value to $82,905 for this year.
May I clarify, please? Is that a 10% discount on the land?
Sorry.
Or a 10% discount on both the improvement and the land?
Just the land.
My recommendation is both, is total taxable.
Okay. Do we want to discuss? Okay, so I'll
There's your motion, we need a second.
Right,
We'll discuss. Okay, there's the motion. Do we have a second?
I second that motion.
Okay, with the motion, second, discussion on the motion. Mallory?
We should amend the motion to be more clear to identify that the 10% discount is on both the improvements and the land value.
Okay, any more discussion?
Get a second on the amendment?
I second that amendment.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, an amendment with the second. No more discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Sir, thank you so much for showing up, and if you do want to go to the Nevada State Board of Equalization, you can do that, and the date is? March 10th. Have a great day. Thank you so much. Okay, on to item F. For possible action, approval of stipulation agreement for Harley-Davidson Credit Corp., 3850 Arrowhead Drive, APN 005-051-21. The assessor.
Thank you, members of the board. Denise Gillette with the Assessor's Office, and we are talking about APN 005-051-21. And this is Harley-Davidson Credit Corporation. They came to us, every year we send them out a letter to be reviewed for economic obsolescence. Unfortunately, they didn't get us their income information in time, so we had to go ahead and have them fill out an appeal process, or an appeal packet. In turn, I did run all my numbers with the income approach. We worked together, and we recommend, based on the information provided, Mr. Rao, Harley-Davidson Credit Corporation's authorization agreed to the stipulated taxable value of $12,884,000. This value includes a taxable land value of $980,100 and an improvement value of $11,903,900. The Assessor's Office recommends a reduction for the subject property. And this is based on the income approach. We also did add in some sales. It's a little bit, there's some limited sales when when you're looking at a property like Harley-Davidson, but we did provide you proof with all of the approaches to value, but most emphasis will be on the income approach.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions or comments for the Assessor's Office?
Can I make a recommendation in regards to the income approach when they complete it? Could you have them sign and date it just so we know who's doing it? Because then that's just a bookkeeping thing.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
All right, any other comments, questions? I'd like to entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion to agree with the assessor regarding parcel number 005-05121, that the stipulated taxable value of Harley-Davidson of $12,884,000 will be reduced to $11 million? $903,900.
Yes, no. That was just the improvement value. The total taxable is a little bit higher.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it, but it needs to be amended.
Okay, and kind of what I'm, if we didn't have a second, we could have just gone through with no motion. But anyway, we have a motion and a second discussion on the motion.
I
Here's-
think
here's-
they're amending the motion, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So here's where you amend the motion. And just read it as the whole thing all over.
Okay, I'm amending the motion to parcel number 005-05121 to be agreed to the stipulated taxable value of $12,884,000,
Land value at?
and the land value at $980,100, and the improvement value of $11,903,900.
Perfect. Okay, so.
Second it.
We have a motion and we have a motion and a second and an amendment and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. Good job, Carson.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, now on to item G, for possible action, approval of stipulation agreement for Little Horn Properties, LLC, Emerson Drive, APN 008-123-38. Back to the assessor.
Donald Massell, Carson City Assessor's Office. This is a stipulation agreement regarding, you just said it, and I'm going to have to say it again, 008-12338. For the 2016, 2017, and 2017, 2018 year, this parcel was, vacant parcel was assessed at tourist commercial. Then there was an appeal made, and then upon discovery, we did a little more searching. Upon discovery, we realized that it was incorrectly zoned, not incorrectly zoned, but incorrectly notated as zoned as tourist commercial, as well as single-family 1 acre. I'm sorry, single-family 6,000.
6,000.
Thank you. So upon that discovery, we changed the land use code from 140 vacant commercial to 120 vacant residential. We reevaluated the sales in the area and determined that the current market value, well, the market value for the 2016, 2017 year should be $90,000 total taxable for the land only, because it is vacant. And 2017, 2018 total taxable for the land only is $108,000 even. This was stipulated on with Little Horn Properties LLC, Gerald LaFleur, and agreed on February 7, 2017. The assessor's office recommends that we reduced the stipulated value to $108,000 for the 2017-2018 fiscal year, and the stipulated value of $90,000 for the 2016-2017 fiscal year.
Thank you. Just for a little bit of clarification, Don, you did a great job. But just a little bit of clarification. So if you look up here on the screen, you'll see where it says use appraisal data, and it has the zoning codes. Those are updated by the planning department, okay? So this specifically said SF6 and TC, which was tourist commercial. So as the previous appraisal or previous appeal that you heard, we have to appraise property in the highest and best use. We valued it based on the tourist commercial. That's what we were told. So when Mr. LaFleur actually appealed the property, again, we dug deeper and thought, well, it's right next to the freeway. How can it be tourist commercial? There's no access to it. So that's when we questioned him and in fact found out that the tourist commercial, it's not zoned tourist commercial. The only zoning it has right now is single family 6,000. It was taxed as of 16-17 as tourist commercial. And it was added onto the roll in June of 2016. So because it was not a parcel and it was not individually owned, it was owned by the state prior to that. When we were able to hear it at the Board of Equalization last year, this parcel didn't exist. So because it came on the roll after we had already adjourned for the year, they have the ability to appeal the 16-17 tax year. So we are asking, and we have agreed with Mr. LaFleur, that a $90,000 value for this current tax year, so he will be getting a reduction in his taxes. We're going to have to send him out a check. But the value for the 16-17 year will be on at $90,000, and for next year it will be on at $108,000, because we are seeing a 20% increase in land values for residential. Mark is doing really well.
Great. Thank you so much for that, both of you. Now any discussion? We can entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion. Is that okay?
Yes.
Who's going to do it? In regards to parcel number 008-12338, commonly known as 455 Emerson Drive, is that correct? Because I had a little trouble with that one.
Yeah, no, it's still a Highway 395 address. There is no address
Okay.
assigned to it.
Okay, so scratch the Emerson Drive part. To agree with the assessor's stipulation value of $108,000 for 2017-18 year, and a stipulated value of $90,000 for the 2016-17 fiscal year, land only as it's vacant.
We have a motion. Second. We have a motion second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those. I'm sorry?
Microphone.
Oh, I hate that. Okay, now that we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Now, on to item H for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding next Board of Equalization meeting date. Mr. Dolly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and you're doing well. We're going to be out of here by noon. I apologize, we're just not ready for the February 21st meeting, so we would like to hold the last meeting on February 28th here at Sierra Room at 9 a.m., please.
Okay, great. And I guess we need to have a motion.
I make a motion that we
Have the next meeting.
close our meeting and have our next meeting on February 28th.
We have a motion, we have a second.
I second.
We have any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? No. Motion carries. And I guess we need to actually separate that last motion to item H for, let's see here. I'm sorry, item I, public comment. The public is invited at this time to comment on any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. No action may be taken on a matter raised under this item of the agenda. Seeing that there's no public, we'll go on to item J, possible action adjournment. Do I have a motion?
I move to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries.
Thank you.